Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we're working on this 1961 Aljo that serves as the photo booth camper for our business, Lamp House Photo. In the last video, we got the skins all on, and I've gone ahead and added some trim around the door and around the wheel arches. So that's all ready to go and get painted, which is what we're going to focus on this week. So there's a few things I got to do to start with. I got to take that window out of the door and take the door handle and stuff off. And I've got to get this all scuffed up and ready to prime. So if you've never primed aluminum before, it's a little bit different than just like painting your house. We're going to need to put a self-etching primer on there first, just kind of a light coat of that, and then we'll follow that up with regular primer, and then we will put our top coat on it. This may prove to be a little bit of a controversial video because of my choice of paint, but I'll explain that when I get closer to it. So for right now, I'm going to get to scuffing, and it's really hot, so I hope I don't burn myself. This is not ideal painting weather, but it's the weather that we have, and we got to get this done. So, okay, so I'm just using these little 3M Scotch-Brite pads just to scuff it up. You don't want anything that's going to leave really deep scratches, just enough to kind of rough up the surface so that the self-etching primer adheres really well to it. If it doesn't adhere well, it's just all your paint's going to fall off. So scuff it, and then we're going to wipe everything down really good and yeah, get it ready for paint. Okay, so with the sides scuffed up, I just have to start masking. We're going to try to match the white that's on this wrap for the top part of the sidewall, and then the bottom will have a green band that wraps all the way around the camper. So I really don't want to get any overspray on the wrap, so I'm going to tie down a tarp over it and then mask the edges so it's nice and protected. And then we'll mask off all of our openings and the wheels and get this ready for some priming. Okay, with this side masked off and Shorty peeing on it. Thanks, Shorty. So with this side masked off, I'm going to go ahead and give it a wipe down just with some water and a rag at first, and then I'll come back with the wax and tar remover and give it a good going over, make sure there's no oily residue left on there. You can also wipe it down with mineral spirits if you want, but you want to wear gloves because that can be kind of hard on your skin to have it all over your hands. So yeah, I'm just going to wipe it down right now. Okay, so with that wipe down, get it as clean as possible and keep your hands off of it. Don't go touching it to see if it's nice and smooth. Just trust that it is. And then with bare aluminum like this, you want to apply a self-etching primer. Now I've got a bunch of these little rattle cans. These are about $10 a can, so I don't really like that, but I couldn't find it in just a gallon form that I could spray on myself. So this is what we're using. This is not the only primer that I'm using. This is just kind of the base coat. So we'll put maybe a coat, maybe 2 coats on there, see how it lays down, how it builds up, and then I'll be coming back with my actual primer over the top of that. And this is to provide a good bond with the bare aluminum surface. Aluminum actually oxidizes as soon as it's exposed to air, and it creates a little protective layer that's only, I don't know, a few microns or something thick. And so you need the self-etching primer to get through that and actually bond to the metal. I think I might just be making this all up. It seems like something I've heard, so that's what I'm going with. Start at the top, work your way down. Long, even strokes, keep the same distance, keep the same angle, thin coats, etc., all the usual advice. Here we go. It's a funny plane. So to be honest with you, that looks like donkey doo-doo, which is why it's getting more primer over the top of it. For one, it's a really dark color. That's all they had. That's all I could get. I think that's all they make that in. There's probably other brands of self-etching primer I could have gone with, but I didn't. I went with what was available to me. This is a good base coat. I'm pleased that one can went that far. I'm displeased that they don't put a fan nozzle on there for something that's supposed to be for automotive finishes. That seems short-sighted in my opinion. We're gonna make do with it. We're gonna get it on there, and then we're gonna spray another primer over it using our actual spray gun, so it should lay down much, much nicer and cover up any inconsistencies in this coat. It's hot. So while the opposite side is drying down, I'm going to take just a 400 grit little sanding block and just knock down any little nibs and dust that might be on this side before I spray it with the next coat of primer. Okay, so that feels pretty good to me. Keep in mind that the ultimate quality of finish you get on one of these is dependent on the surface preparation and the degree of sanding that you do on rough coats. 400 grit is a little bit strong for most really glossy finishes, but where this is just a coat of primer, 400 grit knocks down those little nibs pretty fast and leaves a pretty smooth surface that the next coat of primer is going to cover it up. After sanding, give it a good wipe down with some water, and you can feel just through the cloth if it is rough anywhere, if the cloth drags anywhere. That's somewhere where you might want to go back and sand a little bit more and then wipe it back down again until it's nice and uniform. And that's pretty good on that side. So I just have to do the other side. Okay, let's see how well this goes through our gun. Okay, so far the paint's laid down really clean and I'm really happy with it. For primer, I just used good old Rustoleum, thinned it about 10, 15-ish% with mineral spirits. Turned out great. Really happy with that. When I said this may be the most controversial video I've done so far, where I was going with that is, you put all this work into really new sheet metal, doing a really nice job. It would be nice to have this sprayed by a professional, do an automotive finish on it. But if you've ever had a car painted, you would be shocked how much it would cost to have a camper painted. I have never sprayed automotive finishes. I know from watching YouTube that it is a humongous subject, how to get the best results. Probably second only to welding as far as professionals looking down on amateurs trying to do it. I've done it a few times. It's all about prep. It's all about technique. It's all about being careful, being consistent. Primer's nice and dry, nice and clean, nice and smooth. So we will not be doing automotive finish on this. I may do automotive finish on our Calcraft when we get around to it, if I have the time to practice with it. But for this, we're using Sherwin-Williams oil-based gloss. So it is getting harder to find oil-based finishes in most hardware stores, and they will try their best to talk you out of using them. They are a little more harmful to the environment in terms of the fumes and stuff that they emit as they're drying. When you do find oil-based finishes, they will also be quite a bit more expensive. But I actually got a 40% off sale at Sherwin-Williams, so, you know, it was reasonable. So regardless, I'm going to thin it approximately 10, 15-ish to 1 and get this sprayed. We're going to get a coat on and then let it dry and do a second coat, and it'll probably be looking pretty good by then. Okay, so this morning I shot another coat on there, and I'm pretty happy with how it's dried down. So I'm going to go ahead and take all the masking off and take a look at this. So this is exciting. Will this be a decent match? Can you see Shorty peeing on my tarp? Thanks, Shorty. So I'm going to get this tarp off and all the other masking and see if this paint that I put on there is a decent match for the top skin, or if I've just made a huge mistake. I'm excited. Are you excited? Haha. Woo doggies. Okay, yeah, so there are some limitations to using essentially house paint to paint your camper. You know, you're not going to get quite the same depth of color that you would out of like an automotive paint, and it's not going to be quite as hard drying as if you use an automotive paint, so you can't ultimately get as high of a gloss as you could out of automotive paint. Although being an oil-based paint, you can add a number of additives to it. You can add, I don't know the exact terms for everything, but you can add a hardener to it that will make it more like an epoxy paint. You can add different dryers, retarders, whatever. I think it turned out great. I can't wait to get the windows and the J-rail back on and the lights. And we also have a little bit of color we're going to add in the down here part. So I'm excited to see what that turns out like. I'm happy. If I'm happy, you're happy. Actually, no, you'd probably all be a lot happier with a disaster, because that would be more exciting. And then the like thumbnail image for this video would be like me going, and then there'd be like some text, I screwed it all up, y'all. I know what the YouTube's into. Okay, so I went ahead and hung the door with my dad's help, and that wound up being a little easier than I thought it was. We're going to go ahead and put the J-rail on, and to do that we're going to put a strip of butyl or putty tape around the outer radius, and then we're going to start right here in this bottom corner, and we're going to screw in the end of the J-rail, and then we're going to bend it just slightly, screw it in again, bend it slightly, screw it in, bend it, and until we go all the way around. Yes, but also... Okay, so, yeah, the J-rail's on. There's some windows in there too. What's that about? Well, okay, so months ago when we started this project, we assumed we would be done long before now. So I had an event I had to take this to. And yes, it's maybe only 95, 96, 97, 98% complete. But the photo booth part of it works fine, and the things that are left to do are like little trim things and finish the paint job. So nothing that really would affect the use of the camper as a photo booth, but you know, let this serve as a lesson to those of you that may be interested in building something like this, and you might start booking it before you're finished. Maybe don't do that. Anyway, the windows are in, they're not sealed, there's no butyl behind them, so they're going to come back out as time allows, and I'm going to put the actual seals in them and do them right. But what I need to do right now is to paint the green on the bottom, and so I need to mask off for that and scuff that paint a little bit so that it adheres well to it. And unfortunately, since the J-rail's on and I don't want to paint the J-rail, I have to very carefully mask that off. So, you know, this is the problem with having to finish something before you're ready to finish it. So it's going to be a little more work, but I'm going to get this done. I think it looks great. Okay, so when it comes to spraying a camper, of course, if you don't already have a compressor, you're going to need a compressor, or if not, you're probably going to want like a airless sprayer or something like that. And you can use one of those. I just prefer an air sprayer, like this HVLP spray gun from Home Depot, I think. This is not an expensive one, but it works pretty well. But obviously you need an air compressor, and you need about a 30-gallon compressor minimum to do a job like this. One thing you would want in addition to the spray gun is air pressure regulator. I find 30 psi works pretty good for spraying this kind of paint, but this really helps control that and make it accurate. And because oil and water don't really mix, you want some sort of vapor separator in the line. This is not going to take out all of the moisture in the air, but it's a little desiccant canister that runs it through it, and I find it does a decent enough job. So with the air pressure regulator on, you open your air wide open on your gun, and then you use this to control how much air pressure you're actually getting through there. Flow, you want to be pretty well open, and then your fan control, you want to use it to control how fuzzy the edges of your fan pattern gets. And I've talked about this in a previous video, so we'll link to that. I believe that information still applies. When it comes to mixing paint, you can use one of these little cups that has all the mixing marks on it, and it's a little confusing at first, but it's actually pretty easy. You know, if you want to do a 3-to-1 mix and you want 20 ounces, well, come over here to the 3-to-1 column, and there's a little mark right there, so just follow the number 3. So paint to 3 and then thinner up to the next 3, and that will give you a 3-to-1 ratio. I also sometimes just use a little plastic cup that has the ridges on it, and I'll fill it full of paint, and then I'll add to wherever I've decided to add to with my thinner and go from there. You do have to thin paint to run it through an HVLP gun, so I usually use mineral spirits. You can also use acetone, works really well. The odorless mineral spirits is much less stinky, and your neighbors will probably be a little friendlier for you if you use it. But mineral spirits does take a little longer to dry. You know, that's something to keep in mind depending on what temperature conditions you're working in. Yeah, so there you have it. I think that's all I have to say. Now I'm going to check my masking marks on my camper, and I'm going to spray another coat. Okay, so after looking at it in the daylight and thinking about it a bit, the both of us have decided that that is too green of green. So I'm going to be spraying a new, less green over it, and hopefully one coat will cover it. Sometimes you look at those little color swatches, and of course those are designed for, you know, acrylic, like semi-gloss paints. When you get an oil-based paint and it's nice and glossy, the depth of that color can be a lot more intense. And, you know, while normally if this were going to just be a camper, I would say, oh, I love that green, it's so pretty. You know, for our intended uses of this as a photo booth at weddings and other events, it's probably a little too much. It's always best to stay a little more toned down for events, so you're not stealing the show necessarily. So anyway, It is what it is. I'm going to mix up this other color and spray a coat on and see how it covers. All right, well that's pretty much how it's going to look. I've got a few more things to do to it. It's not 100% complete, so there'll still be more content that comes out of this camper. It goes to its first wedding tomorrow, and then there's a church picnic on Monday that it's going to, and then it's out every weekend after this. So yeah, leave me a comment. Let me know if you have any tips or tricks for doing this outside. Thanks for watching. Please make sure and like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
I just wanna tell you that no, yeah. All of my friends say, girl, you better take care, 'cause that man is trouble, you best beware. And though deep down I know I might be headed for teardrops, now that you got me started, I just can't stop.